There's a bit of a misconception about what the killer instinct is. A lot of people seem to assume that it means going out there and dominating in an offensive barrage. To go into a game and score 50 points and, Jordan every single night, Kobe, Harden, when on their best nights. You're going out there, you're just gonna dominate and humiliate the competition. That is not what a killer actually does. You hear people say, I'm gonna play every game like it's my last. And typically when someone says they're going to play every game like their last, a few things happen. One, you tend to overtry. You do things you wouldn't normally do. Honestly, it's a little disrespectful to the game when you say you're going to play every game like your last. You end up doing selfish things very often. Again, you're taking shots, trying to make plays you'd never make. You're trying to do crazy moves you never do. You want to make an impression on the fans. In other words, your mind is actually not on the game. You're trying to create a memory in the present moment that you can think back on in the future. So that happens. It's over-trying, it's trying too hard, and you're trying to do something that's not organic to the game. I'm not saying you shouldn't play every game like it's your last, but you need to step back and think about what that means. It means, yes, to give your best effort in every circumstance. And that doesn't mean you're moving at a level 10 or you're over trying. It means still playing within the flow of the game. It means respecting the game. If you're gonna play every game like your last to be a killer, you go in and you play the game the way it needs to be played. Now, there are circumstances, there are stretches in a season, or if you're an NBA player in the playoffs where your team's just not with it, and you have to go in and be more aggressive. But that doesn't mean you're going to overtry, you're adjusting to the circumstances. If your team's in a good flow, you want to stay within that flow and not ruin the offense. You see NBA players do this constantly. A team's in a good rhythm, and then the star player comes back in, maybe off the bench, and overtries and disrupts the flow of the game. So killers aren't going out there gritting their teeth and just hell with it, all out, give me the ball, get out of my way. That's not the killer instinct. Killers are artists. They're in the flow of the game. They're hyper aware when they're playing. The second thing that happens when you say, I'm gonna go out there and I'm just gonna dominate, you get yourself amped up before the game, you have an adrenaline buzz. And then that adrenaline goes away. Have you ever started a game? You're feeling pretty good and the game starts, all of a sudden you feel weirdly tired, weirdly heavy. You feel off, feel sluggish, don't feel mentally with it, you feel foggy. Well, that's what happens when you get too amped up. So a lot of guys think that the killer instinct is just that. That's not it. On the defensive end, that's more appropriate for sure. I mean, it's closer, that idea you have on the defensive end is definitely closer to the killer instinct. But if you try to play that way on the offensive end, you're gonna more often than not, get in a lot of trouble, and your game's not going to be consistent. Game in and game out. It's not going to happen. I was watching the MMA this weekend, and as I was making an audio on this very topic for the program, I wanted to do it for YouTube as well, because I see a lot of you guys in the comments talking about you want to go out and dominate and score 40 or 50 points. Killers don't really think that. That's a preset agenda. You're going to play within your capabilities, and when the time calls for it, for you to exert your will, then you're going to exert your will. But I was watching the MMA this weekend, and a fighter named Cody Garbrandt, I don't know if you guys are fans, but Cody Garbrandt's been knocked out 3 times in a row. Now, this is a tough guy. This isn't like this kid has power, he has finesse, but he fights with this killer instinct, the wrong idea of the killer instinct. And there was 2 commentators talking about Cody, and one of the commentators said he let his killer instinct puts him in trouble. And I thought, no, his killer instinct didn't put him in trouble. His misunderstanding of what a killer instinct is gets him in trouble. Because a killer can be hot and cold. He can be the cold, calculated killer, and then the furious, passionate killer. But more often than not, a killer's smooth. They're on the offense especially, they're in that rhythm. They're looking to pick you apart. And then when they've got you picked apart, they start wailing on you. You see this in MMA fighting a lot. They're just kind of pecking. And then they snap one in there and they see their guy get a little discombobulated, and then they're on top of him, pounding him, So that's kind of what happens in basketball too. You start to soften up the defense. You drive a few times, you're shooting from the outside, the inside, you're kneading them kind of like dough, and you're forming them into what you want to, you're softening them up, forming them into what you want, and then you attack. See, a killer isn't just all out all the time, but I don't want you to get that confused, because it doesn't mean we're not playing our very best. It just means we're playing our very best and our smartest. That's what a killer does. It's all out, but all out doesn't mean you're playing at a level 10 intensity where you're out of control. Watch Jordan, watch Curry, watch Harden, and notice how they're not, maybe on their first step they're super explosive, but there's still smoothness there. We talk about the smoothness all the time. I've helped a few professional players become much more consistent by just that tiny shift. You can be smooth on offense. You don't have to get a shot every time. You don't have to panic if you don't get a shot in the first 5 minutes of a game. Jordan a lot of time didn't take his first shot until 6 minutes into the first quarter. Go back and watch footage. I mean, if he was wide open, he would, but he had no problem letting the game come to him. Curry too. Curry will run off screens. And, I noticed with him, he won't get a shot for a long time. And even when he hasn't shot and he sees somebody open, he still passes it. It's part of respecting the game. Being a killer, it has a lot to do with faith, knowing that your time will come in a game and you're going to get plenty of opportunities. It's going to happen. You're going to get about the same number of shots every game. You just have to have faith that it will happen. You can't start to panic if the first quarter is over and you got 2 shots and 0 points. Stay with it. Stay with it. You may need to adjust a little bit, drive a little bit more. But there's a fundamental misunderstanding that the killer instinct, you're going to go out there and you're just going to be a Tasmanian devil. On defense, that's more appropriate. But on offense, it's going to get you in trouble, turnovers, charges, and it's going to get you on the bench, and your teammates aren't going to be comfortable on the floor with you. There are times, again, I have to say this, there are times when you do act with that intensity and a little bit more yang, but you're never at a level 9 or 10 on offense. It's a slight increase in energy from like a 7.5 to like a 7.8. So on offense, if you're going to play all out, you never want to go above a 7.5, 7.8. You're actually a detriment to yourself and your team if you're playing at a level 8 or 9 on offense. You just are. You're not playing all out. You're actually disrespecting yourself and the game. So remember, the killer instinct is hot and it's cold. And it doesn't mean in every scenario you're just putting your head down, 18 moves, crossover, fake spin move, fade away. That's not it. You're still playing in a flow. The game has a flow, has a rhythm. You don't want to be listening to classical music and start aggressively breakdancing. I think a lot of offense is more classical music, and you don't want to go out there and do like an aggressive breakdance. And when I watch basketball, that's what it looks like. This offense has a nice, smooth, jazzy, classical rhythm to it, and you're doing the completely wrong types of movements a lot of the time. So that's just it. Don't mistake killer instinct for out of controlness. And I think Cody Garbrandt in that fight, and maybe he did, the commentator thought he did, but that's not the killer instinct. That's something else. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You can buy the Killer Instinct program.